The mechanic looked at the bolt for 4 seconds, shook his head, and said the words that have cost homeowners and car owners billions of dollars combined. That one's seized. We're going to have to cut it. Cutting a seized bolt means destroying the surrounding material. It means a $12 bolt becomes a $400 repair because the bracket it sits in gets damaged. It means a rusted exhaust manifold stud becomes an engine head replacement conversation. It means a frozen caliper bolt becomes an entire brake assembly job. One seized bolt, one bolt that will not turn cascades into thousands of dollars in labor and parts because the standard approach to a stuck bolt is force, and force on corroded metal destroys the metal. WD-40 has been marketed as the solution to this problem since 1953. It has been in every garage, every toolbox, every workshop in the world for 70 years. And here is what WD-40 actually does to a seized bolt. It lubricates the surface, it reduces friction at the point of contact, it does nothing to the corrosion bond inside the thread. A seized bolt is not stuck because of friction. A seized bolt is stuck because the iron in the bolt and the iron in the nut, or the surrounding metal, have undergone galvanic oxidation. The rust between the threads is not a coating, it is a chemical weld. Iron oxide is formed in the micro gaps between the thread faces, and expanded rust occupies more volume than the iron it replaced, creating a mechanical lock that no lubricant can break because lubrication addresses friction, and this is not a friction problem. This is an electrochemistry problem, and it has an electrochemistry solution that costs $2. A 9-volt battery, 2 pieces of wire, a cup of water with a pinch of salt, and a process called electrolytic rust removal that the automotive industry, the tool manufacturing industry, and the penetrating oil market combined revenues exceeding $80 billion annually have spent decades ensuring you associate with expensive professional equipment rather than a battery you already own. Before we go further, if you have a seized bolt right now, a rusted fastener you cannot shift, a frozen nut on a car, a pipe fitting that will not move, a gate hinge that has welded itself shut, drop the word "sized" in the comments. We want to map exactly how many people are paying mechanics and contractors to solve a problem. A $2 battery trick eliminates permanently. Subscribe now, because the electrolysis section of this video is the part the penetrating oil industry has spent 70 years burying in technical literature away from the people who need it most. To understand why the $2 solution works, you first need to understand precisely why WD-40 does not, and why the industry built its marketing around the problem WD-40 can solve, rather than the problem you actually have. WD-40 stands for water displacement, 40th formula. It was developed in 1953 by the Rocket Chemical Company for the aerospace industry, specifically to prevent corrosion on Atlas missile components. The formulation is a petroleum-based water displacement fluid. Its purpose is to displace moisture from metal surfaces and leave a thin oil film that temporarily prevents oxidation. It works excellently for what it was designed to do. If your bolt is simply wet and at risk of rusting, WD-40 protects it. If your bolt has mild surface rust and the threads are not yet bonded, WD-40 provides enough lubrication to free the mechanical connection. These are real applications with real results. But here's what the marketing never specifies. WD-40 is a preventive and surface lubricant. It was never designed to reverse established corrosion. It cannot penetrate the crystalline iron oxide structure inside a seized thread. It cannot reverse the electrochemical bond that galvanic rust forms between mating metal surfaces. Spraying WD-40 on a truly seized bolt is the equivalent of applying sunscreen to a sunburn. It addresses the category skin, sun, damage, but at the completely wrong point in the timeline to do anything useful. The penetrating oil market WD-40, PB Blaster, Liquid Wrench, Croil, and dozens of competitors generates approximately $1.5 billion in annual retail revenue. Every one of these products has the same fundamental limitation. They work on friction-locked fasteners and they fail on corrosion-welded fasteners. The marketing conflates these two conditions because conflating them is what keeps the product moving off shelves. The distinction matters enormously because it changes what the solution is. A friction-locked fastener needs lubrication. A corrosion-welded fastener needs the corrosion chemically reversed. Those are different problems with different solutions, and the solution to corrosion reversal does not come in a spray can. It comes from a 9-volt battery. Electrolytic rust removal is not new knowledge. It is not fringe science. It is not an experimental technique. It is established electrochemistry that has been in industrial use for over a century in metal conservation, museum artifact restoration, marine salvage, and industrial manufacturing. Here is what happens inside a seized bolt at the molecular level. When iron corrodes, it undergoes oxidation. Iron atoms lose electrons and combine with oxygen and water to form iron oxide rust. The rust crystals grow inside the thread gaps, physically expanding and creating that chemical weld that no lubricant can break. The corrosion bond is not a surface phenomenon. It is three-dimensional, penetrating every microcrack and thread face throughout the length of the engagement. Electrolysis reverses this process through a principle called electrochemical reduction. When you apply a small electrical current through the corroded metal using a saltwater electrolyte solution, you force electrons back into the iron oxide molecules. The oxygen atoms that combined with the iron to form rust are driven away from the surface. They migrate toward the positive electrode and are released. The iron oxide converts back toward metallic iron. The rust is chemically reduced, not just coated or displaced. The crystalline structure that created the mechanical lock breaks down. The bolt does not just loosen. The corrosion that was welding it in place ceases to exist. This process was first documented industrially in the late 1800s. By the mid-20th century, it was standard practice in archaeological conservation, the same technique used to preserve iron artifacts recovered from shipwrecks, medieval weapons pulled from bogs, Roman-era tools excavated from building sites. Museum conservators have been electrochemically reversing rust on priceless iron objects for over 70 years. And the average person buying their third can of WD-40 inches a year does not know a 9-volt battery can do what no penetrating oil in any spray can will ever do. This is not accidental ignorance. The penetrating oil market is a shelf presence industry. It is built on visibility, the bright yellow cans, the distinctive smell, the universal brand recognition. Products that require no packaging, no retail channel, and no repeat purchase do not compete in that system. They simply do not appear in it. The story of how electrolytic rust removal stayed hidden from consumers is a story about channel control, not chemistry suppression. By the 1970s, electrolytic rust removal was well established in 3 professional contexts: industrial metal descaling and manufacturing, archaeological conservation, and marine restoration. The equipment used in industrial applications, rectifiers, large electrolytic tanks, specialized electrode materials, was expensive and complex. The professional framing of electrolysis as industrial equipment requiring specialist operation was accurate for those applications. What was never communicated, because there was no commercial incentive to communicate it, was that the same electrochemical process operates at any scale. The physics does not require a $2,000 industrial rectifier. It requires a potential difference of voltage applied across 2 electrodes in an electrolyte solution. The minimum viable version of this is a 9-volt battery, 2 wires, and salt water. The process does not become less effective at small scale. The electrochemistry is identical. The automotive aftermarket understood this. Professional restorers, machinists, and serious hobbyists in the classic car community have been using DIY electrolysis setups since at least the 1980s. The knowledge lived in workshop manuals, in enthusiast forums, in the apprenticeship knowledge passed between mechanics in independent shops. It did not live in hardware stores. It did not live on the shelves next to WD-40. It did not appear in the advertising that automotive product companies directed at general consumers. Because the people who controlled consumer-facing distribution of automotive maintenance products had no product to sell that competed with a 9-volt battery and salt water. The penetrating oil market, $1.5 billion annually. The professional rust treatment market, a further $3 billion in industrial and automotive applications. The mechanic labor market for seized fastener removal, which is among the highest billed diagnostic and repair tasks in automotive maintenance charges, between $80 and $200 per hour for work that often comes down to freeing a single seized bolt. All of this revenue flows through the gap between what you know about rust removal and what the electrochemistry has always made possible. This video closes that gap. Everything you need is either already in your home or available for under $5 total. This is the complete inventory: a 9-volt battery or a 1-2-volt car battery for larger applications, 2 lengths of wire with alligator clips, sold as jumper wire sets for under $3 at any electronics retailer, a plastic container large enough to submerge the fastener or reach the seized connection, water, table salt or baking soda, and a piece of scrap steel, a washer, a nail, a piece of rebar, anything steel that is not stainless to serve as the sacrificial anode. That is the entire equipment list. Under $5 if you own nothing. Under $2 if you already have wire and a battery. Understanding the setup before you start. The battery has a positive terminal and a negative terminal. The piece of scrap steel connects to the positive terminal, this is the anode, the electrode that will corrode during the process. The seized bolt or fastener connects to the negative terminal, this is the cathode, the electrode where rust will be reduced and removed. The salt water is the electrolyte that allows current to flow between the two. This polarity matters and cannot be reversed. Connecting the fastener to the positive terminal will accelerate its corrosion rather than reverse it. Step 1. Prepare the electrolyte solution. Fill your container with enough water to fully submerge the fastener or, for in-place applications, to reach the corrosion point. Add 1 tablespoon of baking soda per liter of water. Baking soda is preferred over table salt because it does not produce chlorine gas during electrolysis. Table salt works but produces small amounts of chlorine, which is harmless outdoors but worth avoiding in enclosed spaces. Stir until dissolved. Step 2. Position the anode. Place your scrap steel piece in the solution. It should not touch the fastener. Maintain at least 2 centimeters of separation. The closer the anode is to the corroded surface, the more efficient the current flow and the faster the process. Ideally, position the anode so it surrounds or faces the corrosion point. Step 3. Connect the circuit. Attach one wire from the positive battery terminal to the scrap steel anode. Attach the second wire from the negative terminal to the seized fastener or the surrounding metal as close to the corrosion point as possible. If the fastener is in place on a car, on a piece of equipment, on a structure, clamp the negative wire directly to the fastener head or to the accessible metal immediately adjacent. Step 4. Begin electrolysis. The moment the circuit is complete, current flows through the solution. You will see bubbling at both electrodes, hydrogen gas at the cathode, your fastener, oxygen gas at the anode. The bubbling at the fastener is the direct visual evidence of the electrochemical reduction occurring. You will also see the solution begin to darken and the anode begin to accumulate brown-orange rust. This is the iron oxide migrating away from the fastener and depositing on the anode. This migration is the rust leaving the thread bond. Step 5. Wait. For light corrosion on a small fastener, 20 to 40 minutes is sufficient. For heavily seized bolts with years or decades of corrosion, run the process for 2 to 4 hours. For catastrophically corroded fasteners, structural bolts, marine fasteners, antique equipment run overnight, the process will not overtreat the fastener. You cannot run it too long. The electrolysis removes corrosion and does not attack the underlying iron significantly under these voltage levels. Step 6. Test and apply torque. Remove the fastener from the solution. You will immediately see the difference. The thread surfaces will have visible metallic areas where the rust has been reduced. Apply your wrench or socket. The critical technique here: do not immediately apply full loosening torque. Apply moderate torque in the loosening direction, hold for 5 seconds, then apply moderate torque in the tightening direction. This micro-movement, slight tighten, slight loosen, alternating breaks the remaining physical contact between thread faces. After 3 cycles of this motion, apply full loosening torque. The fastener will move. For in-place seized bolts where you cannot submerge the fastener exhaust manifold studs, chassis bolts, hinge pins use an alternative approach. Pack the area around the fastener with a saltwater-soaked cloth. Attach the anode wire to a piece of scrap steel pressed against the cloth. Attach the cathode wire to the fastener or immediately adjacent metal. The cloth serves as a localized electrolyte. Replace it when it dries. This method is slower but equally effective for accessible corrosion points. Run for 4 to 6 hours and reapply cloth moisture every hour. For bolt extraction, when the head has already sheared the nightmare scenario that sends mechanics to the parts store, electrolysis is the only non-destructive solution. Drill a small hole into the center of the sheared stub. Insert a thin steel rod connected to the negative terminal. Pack the surrounding area with salt water cloth connected to the anode, and run the process overnight. The corrosion bond that is holding the sheared stub and the threads will be reduced. Extraction with a screw extractor becomes possible where before it was impossible. Scenario 1. Automotive seized fasteners. The single most common source of "we need to cut it" in automotive repair. Exhaust manifold studs, caliper bolts, suspension components, drain plugs, wheel bolts that have corroded into aluminum hubs, all of these are electrolysis candidates. The average mechanic bills $150 to $400 for seized fastener removal, not including the cost of the damaged hardware if extraction fails and drilling becomes necessary. Electrolysis eliminates this charge for any accessible fastener entirely. Scenario 2. Plumbing and pipe fittings. Galvanized pipe fittings that have been in place for decades. Gate valve stems frozen in position. Compression fittings on copper pipe that have oxidized solid. Union joints on steel pipe that have not moved in 20 years. These are all corrosion welded connections that respond to electrolysis. A plumber billing at $95 per hour to deal with seized pipe fittings is applying force to a chemistry problem. The electrolysis solution costs $2 and resolves the problem the way it should be resolved by reversing the corrosion rather than fighting it. Scenario 3. Structural and equipment bolts. Gate hinges frozen solid. Shed bolts that have corroded into the frame. Lawn equipment and garden machinery with seized adjustment bolts. Agricultural equipment with fasteners that have been exposed to weather and soil for years. These applications are where the in-place cloth method is most valuable. You cannot submerge a gate post in a bucket, but you can pack it with a saltwater cloth and connect a battery for 6 hours. Here's the arithmetic. 9. Volt battery, $1.50. Wire with alligator clips, $3. Baking soda you already own, $0. Scrap steel washer, $0. Total investment for permanent equipment, $4.50. One treatment per seized fastener. The battery retains sufficient charge for 6 to 8 hours of electrolysis. Cost per treatment, approximately $0.25 in battery depletion. Call it $1 to be generous. Mechanic labor for seized bolt removal, $80 to $400, depending on accessibility and severity, not including parts. Penetrating oil that does not solve the problem, $6 to $12 per can, repeat purchase indefinitely. Professional rust treatment for tools and equipment, $40 to $200 depending on the service. One $4.50 setup eliminates every one of these costs for every seized fastener you encounter for the rest of your life. The battery gets recharged or replaced for $1.50. The wire lasts indefinitely. The baking soda costs pennies per treatment. This is the calculation the $80 billion automotive maintenance and tool industry does not want performed, not because the math is complicated, because the math is devastating to every product and service built on the assumption that you do not know electrochemistry works at this scale. The same $2 setup removes rust from any iron or steel object. Tools, knives, garden implements, cast iron cookware, antique hardware, bicycle components, vintage car parts, chain links, handsaws. The process is identical. Submerge the rusted object as the cathode, position the scrap steel anode nearby without contact, connect the battery, wait. The rust migrates away from the object and deposits on the anode. What emerges is bare, reduced iron, not polished, but clean of corrosion and ready for treatment with oil or paint to prevent reoxidation. Museum conservators have been doing this to Roman swords. You can do it to your grandfather's hand plane. The rust removal market branded rust converters, rust dissolvers, naval jelly, electrolytic rust removal kits sold at significant markup, generates hundreds of millions in annual retail revenue. The active mechanism in many of these products is chemistry that is less effective than electrolysis. The electrolytic rust removal kits that do exist on the market are sold at $40 to $80 for equipment that performs the same function as a 9-volt battery and 2 wires. Every dollar of that revenue flows through the knowledge gap that this video just closed. Go to your garage, or your tool shed, or your car. Find the bolt that has defeated you, the one you sprayed 3 times and gave up on, the one the mechanic said needed cutting, the one on the gate that has not opened in 2 years. Order the wire clips today. They cost $3 online or at any electronic store. You already own everything else. While you wait, look at the problem differently. This is not a stuck bolt. This is a chemistry problem. The rust holding it is iron oxide. Iron oxide is electrochemically reversible. A battery reverses it. When the clips arrive, mix the baking soda solution, connect the circuit with the correct polarity, negative to the fastener, positive to the scrap steel, and wait. 4 hours for a badly seized bolt. Watch the solution darken. Watch the bubbling at the fastener surface. That is the corrosion leaving. That is the problem solving itself through physics while you do something else. Then turn the wrench. And feel what 70 years of WD-40 marketing never delivered. 3 videos, 3 industries, 3 cases of the same structure. The construction industry kept sodium silicate away from the people who needed it and charged $400 for $2 worth of chemistry. The cleaning industry kept hydrogen peroxide at effective concentration off consumer shelves and built a $6 billion mold remediation market on a $1 solution. The automotive and tool industry kept electrolytic rust removal in industrial manuals and professional workshops and built a $1.5 billion penetrating oil market on a product that does not solve the actual problem. The pattern is not coincidence. It is the consistent result of a market structure where distribution channel control determines what consumers know about their own options. The knowledge exists. It has always existed. It lives in technical literature, in professional training, in industrial applications that consumers never see. This channel routes it directly to you. Drop the amount this video just saved you in the comments. Share it with anyone who has been told that bolt needs to come out with a cutter. Share it with anyone who has a seized anything, a bolt, a pipe fitting, a hinge, a valve. Subscribe and hit the bell. We are just getting started on what they buried. The forbidden electrochemistry. We dug it up. The $2 battery trick is yours. WD-40 just became a water repellent. That is all it ever was.